Every woman he ever dated fell in love with his money, none ever fell in love with him. Tonight, Kola Adioi, billionaire CEO, decided to change the rules. If the world only saw a walking bank account, then tomorrow he would show up as the poorest man alive. The city glowed beneath him, a glittering sea of lights stretching to the horizon. From the penthouse balcony, Kola Adioi had the kind of view most people dreamed of, but he felt nothing. Instead, his gaze was fixed on the muted tablet in his hands, where a popular talk show was replaying last night's gossip. Billionaire robot strikes again, the pundit jeered, pointing at a photo of him at a gala, face unreadable. If smiles made money, Kola Adioi would be broke by now. Laughter erupted from the studio audience. Kola's jaw tightened. They didn't know him, none of them ever did. To the public he was a headline, the Ice King, Mr. Emotionless, FinTech Pharaoh. To women he met he was a trophy, a ticket, an ATM with a beating heart. He had learned to spot the change in their eyes the moment they Googled his name. Interest became calculation. Affection became ambition. The loneliness of wealth was something no one warned him about. His smart screen buzzed with an incoming call. Ada, his younger sister, filled the room with her sharp energy before he even answered. Kola, she began without preamble, you're 32. The company's at its peak. Investors want stability. The press is eating you alive. You need someone by your side, or at least someone to soften your image. Kola smirked faintly. Ah, so now I'm a PR project? Not PR, reality, Ada shot back. You hide behind numbers and contracts. But people trust people, not corporations. You need to show you have a heart. He sighed. And where exactly do you expect me to find this mythical woman who won't see me as a wallet? Funny you asked, Ada said, arching a brow. I signed you up on a blind date app. No photos, no bios. First meeting's tomorrow. She won't know you're a billionaire unless you tell her. Kola's laugh was humorless. Ada, that's ridiculous. What's ridiculous, she countered, is you wasting your life in this glass cage, convinced no one can love you. For once, stop being CEO Kola Adioi and just be Kola. The call ended before he could argue. Silence fell again, thick and heavy. Kola set down the tablet and walked to his wardrobe. Row upon row of tailored suits and polished shoes gleamed back at him, symbols of power and status. Yet his hand bypassed them all, reaching instead for an old university hoodie shoved to the back, its fabric faded from years of wear. He pulled it over his head, looking at his reflection in the mirror. Without the armor of wealth, he was just a man, tired eyes, a restless heart, and a desperate hope for something real. Tomorrow night the world would not meet the billionaire CEO. Tomorrow a woman would meet him. And if she stayed, it would be for the first time in his life, not for his fortune but for his soul. The morning sun crept through the penthouse windows, but Kola didn't linger to admire the skyline. His mind replayed Ada's words from last night, for once stop being CEO Kola Adioi and just be Kola. He had barely slept, torn between irritation at his sister's interference and a strange flutter of curiosity he hadn't felt in years. What if Ada was right? What if, for once, he met someone who didn't already know his bank balance, someone who judged him for his words and not his Forbes profile? Kola pushed himself off the leather sofa and walked into his expansive closet. Armani suits hung in neat rows. Shoes polished to perfection lined the bottom shelves. Watches, Rolex, Patek Philippe, Audemars Piguet, sat inside a locked glass case. Each item screamed wealth, authority, power. But this time they were liabilities. He slid past them until his hand found what he was looking for, a pair of faded jeans from his university days, frayed at the hem, an old t-shirt he once wore to codethons, sneakers with scuffed soles. He held them up against his current self in the mirror and almost laughed. He looked like a man who had borrowed another life. But that was the point. In the kitchen his driver, Chaik, was already waiting with the day's itinerary. Sir, your meeting with the central bank delegation is at 10. Should I prepare the car after breakfast? Cancel it, Kola said flatly. Chaik froze. Cancel, sir? Yes. Yinka can handle them. Kola's tone brooked no argument. He glanced at the sleek black SUV waiting downstairs and shook his head. And tomorrow I won't need the car. Chaik's brows furrowed in confusion. You won't? No, Kola adjusted the hoodie he had thrown on, hiding his sharp features beneath the hood. Tomorrow night I'm walking. No suits, no car, no bodyguards. Just me. The driver didn't dare question further, but Kola could feel the shock radiating from him. The billionaire CEO of a multinational fintech company, walking through the city in worn sneakers like a broke student? Sounded absurd. But maybe absurd was exactly what he needed. Later that day, his COO Yinka barged into his office with a report about investor concerns. Kola, your public image is slipping. They think you're detached, out of touch. The board wants you to. Kola raised a hand. I know what they want. I also know what I want. Yinka studied him suspiciously. And what is that? To be seen. For who I am. Not what I own. The older man scoffed softly. You sound like my nephew with a guitar. This is business, Kola. Appearances matter. Maybe, Kola said, leaning back in his chair. But sometimes appearances lie. I'll handle this my way. By evening he had already set the stage. He mapped out the blind date location Ada had texted him. A modest food stall run by a woman called Mama Beezy. No private rooms, no champagne, no Michelin stars. Just street food, plastic chairs, and ordinary people. For the first time in years, Kola felt nervous. Nervous not about deals worth millions but about sitting across from a stranger who wouldn't know, or care, that he was one of the richest men in the country. Tomorrow night he would walk into that stall as a poor man. And if Ada's gamble paid off, he might walk out having met the one person who could finally see through the disguise and into his heart. The city was already alive with noise when Amara stirred awake on the narrow mat she had carefully rolled into the corner of the women's shelter. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant and overcooked beans, and the low hum of voices carried from the hallway as other women prepared for the day. She sat up slowly, her fingers automatically reaching for the small backpack at her side. It was all she had left. A pair of spare jeans, 2 blouses, a Bible worn at the edges, and a stack of neatly folded documents sealed inside a plastic folder. Her resume, certificates and receipts of medical bills, the papers that told the story of how she had gone from having a room, a job and a life, to sleeping under a roof that wasn't hers. Amara smoothed her blouse with practiced hands. Dignity, she had learned, was a choice, even when life stripped everything else away. She braided her hair quickly in the cracked mirror fixed on the wall, then whispered a prayer under her breath. Lord, just one good chance today. As she stepped outside, the sun warmed her face, and the bustle of the street greeted her. Vendors shouted prices of fruit, buses honked impatiently, and the smell of roasted corn drifted through the air. At the corner, an elderly woman's basket of oranges tipped, scattering fruit across the sidewalk. Without thinking, Amara rushed forward. Don't worry, Mama, I've got it, she said, kneeling quickly to gather the runaway oranges. Her fingers moved fast, dodging the impatient feet of pedestrians. She returned the last orange, smiling at the woman. Thank you, my daughter, the old woman said, reaching into her wrapper for a coin. Amara shook her head firmly. Keep it. I only did what anyone should do. The woman clasped her hands in gratitude as Amara walked away, her smile fading into a thoughtful frown. She needed work. She needed stability. She needed a miracle. Back at the shelter, Aoife, the coordinator, called her aside. Amara, wait, this came in. She held up a small donation bag. Inside was a cream-colored blouse, simple but elegant, almost new. I thought of you. Didn't you say you had a meeting today? Amara's eyes softened. Thank you, Aoife. God bless you. She slipped the blouse into her backpack and walked toward the bus stop. The meeting wasn't an interview exactly, it was just a chance at a casual job recommendation one of the volunteers had whispered about. But Amara treated every chance as though it could change her life. As she stood waiting, her stomach rumbled, reminding her that she hadn't eaten since yesterday afternoon. She ignored it, straightened her shoulders and whispered to herself, one day at a time. That evening, a text buzzed her borrowed shelter phone. A friend from the volunteer network had set her up on something she hadn't expected, a blind date. Amara blinked at the screen, surprised. A blind date? For someone like her? She almost laughed at the absurdity. But as the last light of the day faded, she folded the cream blouse carefully and whispered, maybe this is the good chance I asked for. The air around Mama Beezy's food stall was alive with the smells of frying oil, spices, and freshly baked puff-puff. The makeshift canopy flapped lightly as evening winds stirred, and customers lined up for plates of jollof rice and steaming beans, their chatter filling the street corner. Kola arrived first, dressed in faded jeans, sneakers that looked a little too plain for his sharp features, and a hoodie pulled low over his head. For once, no driver trailed him, no security hovered near, and no one recognized him. He felt almost invisible, and oddly free. He ordered awkwardly, fumbling with the Naira notes in his pocket. He wasn't used to paying with cash anymore, and when Mama Beezy squinted at him, amused, he managed a crooked smile. It's been a while since I had real food like this. City men always forget the good things, she teased, handing him a steaming plate. He settled into a plastic chair at the corner table, trying to look relaxed. But his nerves jumped with every passing minute. Would she come? Would this entire plan crash before it even started? Just then he noticed her. Amara approached slowly, her cream-colored blouse pressed as neatly as she could manage, her jeans clean but worn at the knees. She carried herself with quiet dignity, though the small backpack slung across her shoulder hinted at a life lived on the edge of stability. Cola's breath caught, not because she looked glamorous but because she looked real. No pretense, no polished mask. She paused by the stall, scanned the crowd, and then her gaze landed on him. "You must be Cola?" she asked cautiously. He nodded, standing to pull out the chair opposite him. "And you must be Amara." For a heartbeat the air felt charged. Two strangers, two hidden lives, sitting across from each other in the glow of streetlight and frying oil. They both laughed lightly at the awkwardness, breaking the tension. Cola gestured to the food. "Have you eaten? Mama Beezy cooks like she's feeding an army." Amara smiled faintly. "Then I guess I'm lucky. I haven't had anything since yesterday." She sat and Mama Beezy brought her a plate. As Amara lifted her fork, a small boy hovered nearby, eyes fixed hungrily on the puff-puff. Amara noticed immediately. Without hesitation, she tore one in half and handed it to him with a smile. The boy grinned, thanked her shyly and darted off. Cola watched struck. There was no performance in her kindness, just instinct. He reached into his pocket, bought an extra pack of puff-puff and quietly passed it to Mama Beezy. "For any other kids who come by." Their eyes met and for the first time both of them smiled without effort. As the night settled around them, the clatter of the city faded. In that small, plastic-chaired corner of the world, it was just Cola and Amara, two strangers who didn't know each other's secrets, yet felt an undeniable spark of recognition. Neither of them could guess that this chance meeting was about to rewrite both their lives. The evening hum of the city wrapped around Mama Beezy's stall. The aroma of fried plantain lingered in the air as Cola and Amara sat facing each other, the glow of a dim streetlight painting their faces in soft gold. Around them, taxis honked and bus conductors shouted destinations, yet somehow the noise felt distant, like the world had given them a pocket of quiet to begin something unexpected. Amara poked at her food thoughtfully before glancing at him. "So, what do you do?" It was the question Cola had always hated. Normally the answer, CEO of a billionaire fintech empire, changed everything. Smiles widened, tones softened, motives sharpened. But tonight, for the first time, he had the freedom to say something else. "I do odd jobs," he said with a shrug, surprising himself with how natural the words sounded. "Some coding here, some tech troubleshooting there. Whatever puts food on the table." Her brows lifted. "Coding? That's serious work. People underestimate it, but it's the backbone of everything these days." Cola tilted his head, intrigued. Most people in his circle just saw coding as something you outsourced, not something to respect. "And you?" he asked, genuinely curious. Amara hesitated, her fork pausing mid-air. How did she explain homelessness to a stranger without turning the air heavy? Finally she smiled faintly. "Let's just say I'm between places. Trying to get back on my feet." Cola didn't push. There was no judgment in his gaze, no flicker of pity, just a quiet acceptance that made her shoulders relax. Conversation flowed easier after that. They spoke about little things first. Favorite street foods, the best spots to buy secondhand books, the chaos of Lagos traffic. Cola admitted he'd never learned to haggle properly at the market. Amara laughed, offering mock-serious tips on bargaining with stubborn sellers. Then the rain came, sudden, heavy drops pelting against the tin roof of the stall. Customers scrambled to pull chairs closer under the canopy, water splashing at their feet. Without thinking, Amara shifted her seat so Cola wouldn't get wet, dragging a cracked piece of plastic sheeting from the corner to hold above them. "Here," she said, her fingers brushing his lightly as they lifted it together. Cola looked at her, surprised. Most of the women he knew would have complained about the rain ruining their hair, their clothes, their evening. But here was Amara, laughing as water dripped from the edges of the plastic, her shoulders damp but her eyes bright. "You don't seem bothered," he said. "It's just rain," she replied with a shrug. Some things in life aren't worth making noise about. The simplicity of her words struck him harder than he expected. For so long, his world had been full of noise, media headlines, boardroom arguments, endless judgments. Sitting here with her, sharing puff-puff in the rain, felt like breathing in silence for the first time. As the storm poured around them, Cola realized something. He didn't want this moment to end. And for reasons she couldn't yet explain, neither did Amara. The rain slowed to a drizzle, leaving the streets glistening beneath the flicker of streetlights. At Mama Beezy's stall, business picked up again. Customers slurping steaming bowls of pepper soup, children tugging at their mothers' wrappers, and young men laughing loudly as they jostled for seats. Kola and Amara lingered, their plates mostly empty but their conversation still alive. For the first time in years, Kola wasn't watching the clock or filtering his words. He was simply present. Then it happened. A skinny teenage boy, no older than 14, darted from the shadows. His eyes locked on the tin cash box Mama Beezy kept by her stool. In one swift motion he grabbed it and bolted. The stall erupted in shouts. "Thief! Catch him!" Customers jumped to their feet. Mama Beezy cried out, clutching her apron. But before anyone else could react, Amara was already moving. She leapt from her chair, her feet splashing through puddles as she sprinted after the boy. Her cream blouse clung to her in the damp air, but she didn't care. "Stop!" she called, her voice firm, commanding. The boy stumbled when his worn slippers slipped against the wet pavement. Amara caught up, grabbing the edge of the cash box before it could tumble from his grip. They froze, both breathing hard. Up close, she could see the fear in his wide eyes, the desperation written across his thin frame. He wasn't just a thief, he was hungry, tired, cornered. "Please," he panted, clutching the box. "I just needed—" "I know," Amara interrupted softly, her grip steady but gentle. "But this isn't the way. You'll only make things worse for yourself." The boy's hand shook. For a moment it looked like he might fight her. But something in her calm gaze disarmed him. Slowly, reluctantly he let go. Amara crouched slightly, lowering her voice so only he could hear. "Go home if you have one. If you don't, come to the shelter by the bus park tomorrow. They'll feed you, no questions asked. But don't steal from women who are working twice as hard as you to survive." The boy's eyes flickered with confusion, then shame. Without another word, he turned and vanished into the shadows. Amara carried the tin back to Mama Beezy, setting it gently on the stool. The older woman's hands trembled as she clutched it to her chest. "Ah, my daughter, God bless you. If not for you." Amara only smiled faintly, brushing the damp hair from her face. "It's nothing. He was just a boy." Kola, watching the entire scene, felt something shift inside him. He had seen courage in boardrooms, in negotiations, in men fighting to protect fortunes. But this was different. Amara had risked herself not out of pride or anger, but out of instinctive compassion. When she returned to their table, soaked and slightly breathless, Kola found himself at a loss for words. "You're braver than most people I know," he said finally. Amara shrugged, reaching for her water. "Sometimes it's not about bravery. Sometimes it's just about doing the right thing, even if no one claps for you." Kola's chest tightened. For the first time in years, he realized he was sitting across from someone who lived the values he only talked about. And he wasn't sure whether to feel exposed or inspired. The rain had washed the streets clean, leaving the scent of wet dust and fried food lingering in the cool night air. Kola and Amara walked side by side down a quieter road, the hum of the city softening behind them. Kola kept stealing glances at her. The way she carried herself, head held high despite the damp clothes and simple sandals, fascinated him. In her presence, he didn't feel like the powerful CEO he always had to be. He felt human. "You didn't have to run after that boy," Kola said, breaking the silence. Amara smiled faintly. "And let him ruin his life over a cash box? Sometimes people just need a chance." Her words sat heavy in his chest. He thought of all the men who had come begging for funding, all the startups he had dismissed in boardrooms because they seemed too small, too risky. How many chances had he withheld, blinded by balance sheets? They turned a corner where a broken street light flickered. Amara stopped abruptly. Ahead was a line of makeshift tents, patched with nylon and cardboard. She hesitated, then gave a small sigh. "This is me," she said quietly. Kola frowned. "You live here?" Amara's lips curved into a wry smile. "For now. Don't look so shocked. Life doesn't always go the way we plan. But it doesn't mean I'll stay down." Something inside Kola cracked. He had come tonight pretending to be poor, desperate to escape the shadow of his wealth. But here was Amara, actually homeless, radiating a dignity he hadn't seen in boardrooms filled with billionaires. Before she could retreat into the shadows, he touched her arm gently. "Amara?" His voice was low, steady. "Whatever happens, I want to see you again." She studied him, searching his face for signs of pity. But all she found was sincerity. After a long pause she nodded. "All right then. Tomorrow evening. Same place. Kola smiled. For the first time in years, it wasn't a deal being sealed, it was a promise. Over the next few days they met again and again. At Mama Beezy's stall, in the park where children played football, even on the steps of the library where Amara sometimes read donated books. Kola found himself laughing more than he had in years. Amara's stories, sharp wit and unshakable optimism lit up the dull edges of his world. She, in turn, found comfort in his attentive silence, the way he listened without rushing to advise or judge. But beneath it all lay their secrets. Kola hid his wealth, still dressing in simple shirts and worn jeans. Every time he wanted to tell her the truth, fear choked him. Would she see him as just another rich man playing games? Amara hid her struggles, never confessing how she often went to bed hungry or how she patched her only good blouse at night under the dim glow of a street lamp. She didn't want his sympathy. One evening, as they shared roasted corn by the roadside, their hands brushed. Neither pulled away. Instead, Amara looked at him with something vulnerable in her gaze. "You're different," she whispered. Kola's throat tightened. "So are you." In that moment, sparks flew, not just attraction but recognition. Two souls stripped of masks, if only for a heartbeat. Trouble came unexpectedly. A black SUV rolled up one evening while Kola and Amara were walking near the bus park. From it stepped three men in sharp suits, board members from his company. They froze when they saw him. "Kola? What on earth are you wearing? And who is this?" one demanded. Kola's blood ran cold. Amara looked between them, confusion dawning. "Kola? You know them?" He stammered, fumbling for words. But the men were already sneering. "We've been looking everywhere for you. And here you are, parading with this girl?" Their gaze slid over Amara like she was invisible. Shame and anger battled inside Kola. He wanted to tell them off, to defend her. But the words stuck. In that hesitation, Amara's eyes hardened. She stepped back. "So, you're not who you said you were." Kola reached for her. "Amara, please, I can explain." But she was already walking away, her shoulders stiff, her world tilting. Trust, the one thing she had given him so freely, had shattered. For days, Amara avoided him. Kola sent messages through Mama Beezy, waited near the shelter, even left handwritten notes at the library steps. Nothing worked. Until one Saturday morning when Amara went to volunteer at the shelter. As she served food to a line of tired faces, a commotion stirred. Cameras flashed, reporters pushed forward. And then she saw him. Kola, dressed in his finest suit, standing at the podium set up outside. The world now watching. "I owe an apology," he began, his deep voice trembling slightly. "Not to shareholders, not to investors. But to one woman who showed me that wealth means nothing without kindness. I lied about who I was because I was afraid no one could love me without my money. But she did. She valued me when I had nothing. And I value her more than everything I own." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Amara stood frozen, the ladle trembling in her hand. Then Kola did the unthinkable. He stepped down from the podium, walked past the cameras and knelt before her in the dust. "Amara," he said, eyes locked on hers. "I don't care if the world thinks I'm foolish. I just need you to know, I choose you. Not as CEO, not as a billionaire, but as a man who wants to walk beside you." The shelter went silent. Amara's throat tightened as tears threatened. Slowly she set down the ladle, her heart racing. "Get up, Kola," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You didn't need to do all this. You had me from the start." He rose and she stepped into his arms. Cameras flashed, cheers erupted, but in that moment there was no world, only them. Weeks later, the transformation was undeniable. Kola didn't whisk Amara into a palace or drape her in jewels. Instead, he stood beside her as she worked to build the small NGO she had dreamed of, using his resources to expand shelters and fund opportunities for the homeless. Amara in turn grounded him. She kept him human in rooms filled with excess, reminding him that leadership wasn't about control, it was about compassion. At a quiet dinner one evening, Kola reached across the table, taking her hand. "You know," he said, smiling, "pretending to be poor was the best mistake I ever made." Amara laughed softly, her eyes warm. "And falling for a homeless girl was the smartest thing you ever did." The city buzzed around them, alive with noise and light. But in their small corner of it, two unlikely souls had found something priceless. Love built not on wealth or appearances but on truth. And this time neither needed to pretend.